Okay, today we've got Robert, the founder of the Community and Club Collective, or TCACC for short. I think we'll use that a bit more. Thanks for jumping on, Robert. I think this conversation, mate, is pretty timely given the incredible response and support the Matildas have received with their World Cup campaign. It's been pretty exciting. I'm sure you've been watching closely.
Yeah, it's just good for Australia, isn't it? A major sporting event has huge benefits for the economy, people's morale, and especially young children, never mind the whole female aspect that is going to be even more targeted before, during, and post the World Cup.
Yeah. Of course, it's incredible. Hopefully the government, I think they already have, right? They've announced some funding and backing for sports, which is great.
It's always nice to hear that money starting to flow from government, but there's always that argument that there should be a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty shocked, actually, because my background's sport. I used to be a soccer player, and only this year, actually, I went to sign up. And because I've never paid for registration before, and they told me how much it was. I nearly fell over. I couldn't imagine other countries with the background of football have those kind of costs. It'd be a lot more accessible, do you think?
Yeah, so there's always a lot of discussion within the football space around what the cost to play is, and it always comes up as to what's the international standard is, and everyone goes, it should be more accessible, it should be cheaper, but you can hear anywhere from $500 up to $3,500 pretty frequently, which is a lot of money, especially for families who have 2, 3, 4 children playing. Like, it takes up a big portion of that disposable income.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's a good segue into what you're doing. I guess for transparency, Robert, TCACC, you're one of our newer premium clients on our Pro plan, and we really develop your partnership strategy and get you in front of new potential partners to obviously get in front of new customers. So maybe for some context, Robert, what is TCACC and what do you guys do?
Yeah, definitely. So the Community and Club Collective has 2 core purposes: is to help grassroots sport generate more money, and it's to reduce volunteer workload. Now, we do that across multiple sports nationwide, but it's really about those 2 core principles. If we can help junior sport, community sport, senior sport, it doesn't really matter the level within that community space, but it's all about just making sure that sport's affordable. Everything continues to increase in price, so if we can generate more revenue and reduce the workload on volunteers, we think that sport can be sustainable and enjoyable for a lot more people.
Yeah, nice. And before we get into how exactly that happens, how did you get into it? What's your background? What do we need to know for us to make sense? Oh, that's how you got there. It's pretty niche.
So the background is I came through the sports industry, always worked in sport, and worked across multiple sports: AFL, netball, basketball, at senior management level within grassroots sporting clubs, state sporting organisations, and professional sporting clubs. And after a period away from the sports industry, about 18 months, 2 years, really took some time to go, well, I want to be back in sport. Where's the biggest gap? And I kept on coming back to the challenges I faced, I knew other stakeholders in the industry faced, was that there wasn't a dedicated resource or help at grassroots level around revenue generation. And that's just purely because every organisation is looking after themselves. So we said, well, let's go down to the grassroots level, understand who sponsors sport. And this was a really interesting piece from our perspective. Once we identified we wanted to generate revenue, reduce volunteer workload, we said, well, how can we go about that? And then we did a bit of a look through a variety of industries to go, well, everyone uses data. Well, the sports industry uses it at a professional level and at a national level, but not at grassroots level. So we actually undertook the audit of the community sport sponsorship industry before we even started. And that was a look at about 8,500 clubs to just understand what industry sponsor, how big the industry is, and to make sure that there was a scope of opportunity to be employed and to help out volunteers.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's incredible. To give us a bit of a snapshot, how big is TCACC? When did you start? What's the team look like?
Yeah, so going back to my background, I actually went to university and did Bachelor of Business with Sports Management. And through that, I actually had to do an internship, and I did it with Gold Coast Marathon. And I thought, as I was building this out, because we're at grassroots level, it would be great to actually provide a pathway for students currently studying to get some experience. So we actually have partnerships with 17 universities where we provide students with internships anywhere from about 100 hours up to 500 hours, where we will give them a lot of training, but they will be the workforce who does the work on behalf of the volunteers. The really good ones, we move into casual, part-time, full-time employment thereafter, but it's really about building that network at the grassroots level and then helping them to get employed in the industry and hopefully to help them realise that revenue generation is a huge opportunity if they want to work in the sports industry. So that's where our biggest base of workforce comes from. I am the sole full-time person, and then we bring in the part-time, the casual people on an as-needs basis as well.
Yeah, nice. And what's the current solution for, I guess, on the sporting club side, like in place now? Is it basically volunteers that run the club, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, so absolutely volunteers. In some cases, it's unskilled volunteers where they are very passionate. They might have been around the club for a long period of time, but they may not have been skilled or trained in sales, in sponsorship, in revenue generation. In some cases, they don't have great written skills even. So grant writing is a challenge to them. Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, you also have some very highly efficient C-level executives that are doing it almost as just another part of their day-to-day operation. So there's so much variety in it at grassroots level, but they all have the same core functions. They all need money to operate. They've all got overheads that continue to rise, and there's a more and more competitive challenge around recruiting participants, never alone volunteers.
And how are you training or enabling these clubs or volunteers and people running the clubs to identify new opportunities and to squeeze more revenue?
Yeah, so we go back to that data-driven approach. So we utilise or we create a sponsorship benchmark report, which is a really strong foundation to understand what 20 to 30 industries club and volunteers should be targeting. We also provide support to volunteers to actually upskill them, because we know we don't have the capacity to do it on behalf of every club. So a big piece of our work is actually generating the resources so that volunteers can go and implement themselves. And this is partly to do with, we actually want more people to put their hand up to volunteer. And one of the big barriers for people volunteering is they can't volunteer if they don't believe they can be successful. They would rather not volunteer than be unsuccessful. And sponsorship and revenue generation is one of those really challenging spaces where people perceive that they won't be able to sell, so then they don't put their hand up. Whereas sponsorship's much more a relationship than a sales piece. So the people who have had no experience are the people we are desperately seeking to engage with. And the other group of people we love to see are those that are 16 to 25. We love those people who are coming into the sports industry, who are wanting to be part of a committee but might not want the responsibility of being a president or a secretary, but they actually don't know what's involved at the revenue generation, and this is really giving them the skills that are transferable to their normal day-to-day work environment as well.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to learn how to sell, right?
It's a basic skill that should be taught a lot earlier in life.
Definitely. Now, on the flip side, obviously, you've got two sets of customers. You've got the sporting clubs and you've got businesses. I was quite floored by some of the stats and opportunities that presents themselves at grassroots level. What's some of the misconceptions right now about brands or businesses sponsoring grassroots sporting clubs?
Yeah, probably the biggest misconception, I think this is on both sides of the fence. I think it's from the club volunteer plus the business, is that traditionally it's almost been set up to be a glorified donation. The business gives them money, there'll be boxes to tick, so logos get placed here, there, or everywhere. And then 12 months' time, the club comes back and asks for more money. And the question goes, well, what did you give us? What was the value, etc.? There needs to be a level of maturity brought into sponsorship. And this is, in particular, from a business perspective. Sponsorship is marketing. Let's actually move past the piece of logo placement. Logo placement definitely has a place within marketing and within sponsorship, but there's so many great things we can actually do to leverage the audiences and community at grassroots sports to actually drive sales. It doesn't take much to actually transform the relationship from being a logo placement to a transactional basis where the business can make money.
Absolutely. So let's maybe, for people that haven't been around sporting and stuff like that, sports and clubs and how it works, can you kind of describe to us where does a sponsorship for start? How much would it cost a business minimum just to get started? And then physically or practically, how do you see those campaigns working the TCACC way instead of what used to happen?
Yeah, definitely. So sponsorship, it can be anything from probably about $250 upwards. So it's a really affordable marketing strategy. I definitely recommend people start at $500. I think once you're at $250,
that's for the year?
Per year, yes.
Per year.
So once you're at $500, it's about $10 a week, is about the gauge where I like to start things. Naturally, your bigger clubs, your bigger associations will want a bit more, but I'm still seeing probably 99% offer something under $1,000. In terms as to how to make this a revenue generator for businesses, it's quite simple as to we just need to be able to track sales, track leads. And one of the options we promote to the clubs especially is let's do a 30-day challenge. And the reason why we love a 30-day challenge is people play sport because they love to be winners. They love that competition. There's peer pressure that you can impose on people within a sporting club that is not socially acceptable outside of sport. And we'll give you the example of a pizza shop, for example. Let's have seniors versus juniors, or committee versus participants, or masters versus first year members. Who's going to buy the most pizzas in a 30-day period? The goal here is to have tangible sales for the pizza shop.
Healthy pizzas.
Yeah. As a club, we actually don't need to utilise a logo. The logo is not needed to be put onto apparel. It doesn't need to go onto a fence. It might be nice to see your logo somewhere, but this is all about making money. How do we do that? Well, we promote it internally. We tell our members, next 30 days, let's see who's going to buy the most pizzas. On a weekly basis, we update a leaderboard, which we put onto social media. We can see, is it the seniors or is it the juniors? The great option here is that we aren't relying on one person to make a purchase. It's not compelling people that you must buy pizza in this 30-day period, but it's allowing the club to actually drive a benefit that can actually see the pizza shop make money and reinvest that back into the club. Additionally, that can be done either in the first 30 days of the relationship, or else it can be done midway. But you've also got the other 11 months of the relationship. So if we can get this 30-day challenge done, say in the first 3 months of your agreement, you've still got 9 months of residual benefits, because your business is providing the members a great or memorable experience. And if they have a great or memorable experience, A, they're more likely to be a returning customer, but they're also more than willing to give a word of mouth referral.
I guess it's like any business, right? You need to have a good product and good service, and that they can, I guess, a sporting club can only get you in front of people and purchase for the first time, and then it's up to you to deliver.
Absolutely. And the 30-day challenge is all about getting our members to, A, know who the sponsor is, B, become really familiar with who the staff are, and C, be really comfortable pulling out the credit card and making a purchase. Because that's the biggest challenge for business, isn't it? Getting people to actually pull out the credit card and say, I'm going to spend money.
Yeah. I see that obviously working for the businesses. How does, because to be honest, $250 or $500 a year doesn't seem like much, but to a grassroots sporting club, what does that mean?
So for different sports, it means different things, but $500 for some clubs will cover a set of uniforms. It's anywhere from $35 to $40 for some playing shirts. You've got 10, 11 people on your team. There's a full team decked out. Really easy to do. It could be as simple as coach accreditations. You're working with children checks, etc. So making sure that governance side of things are in check. A financial audit anywhere from $500 to a couple $1,000. Again, another mandatory requirement of running a club, paid for by this partnership. So a really powerful, tangible benefit for the club.
Nice. And on the average, just say for your normal local sporting clubs, how many sponsors does a club have?
Yeah, so when we had a look at the national data, there's 12 sponsors per club, but there's 52% of all clubs actually promote no sponsors. Now, I think that's just purely because they've got a little bit lazy. They haven't been held accountable by the sponsor. And if we include all of those clubs, the national average is 5 sponsors per club. So between 5 and 12, with the best performing sport at 21.
Okay, there you go. That's not a great deal, is it?
21, 2 per month gets you to 24. 21's a lot, but that's also within AFL, who have a lot more participants per team, which seems pretty manageable from that perspective. But the thing is, the audience is there. So the question isn't necessarily, are your competitors accessing this audience? It's whether the participants at 6 to 10 years of age, whether they're your right audience, or whether you're looking for the 50 to 80-year-old playing Masters. It's identify what niche you're looking for, and then it can be a really powerful connection.
And so now we know we've got a good background about what you're doing. Where's the North Star? What are you trying to do? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. 10,000 clubs to generate $10,000 with a 10 times return on investment. So what that looks like is a $1 billion industry. That's the end goal, but at the end of the day, it's really about going back to our 2 core purposes. More revenue, less workload for volunteers, where sponsorship is delivering a return on investment to sponsors or businesses. We don't want to have any businesses say our logo was placed somewhere, or for a business to have a club come back 12 months later and go, can you give us some more money? Like, we actually want that relationship. We want there to be a closer communication, closer decision making between the two organisations, because when we get that, it's not only sustainable, it's much more enjoyable for the business and also for the members.
Mm. So what are some of the highlights, Robert, so far? What's happened that you've got you really excited? Some of the wins.
Yes, some of the wins, we are just seeing a lot of different industries at different points of the year get really active. So in the October to December phase, we see solar industries become really active, really proactive, and almost approach clubs looking to sponsor. We see a lot of clubs who just don't know where to look, so that they are relying on their personal network. So having the benchmark report is actually a exciting step where we can actually take volunteers away from their personal network and go, let's look at this as being able to provide a return on investment. We have had some clubs go through the 30-day challenge where they have been able to generate 4 to 5 times the initial investment in that 30-day period, really setting up that relationship for within 12 months being able to generate a 10-time return on investment. But I think it also comes down to the excitement, as we mentioned at the very start. The Football World Cup, the sports industry in Australia, we've got the Basketball World Cup in a week's time, we've got the Rugby World Cup, there's the Cricket World Cup at the back end of the year. There's so much sport, and in the next 10 years, Australia is really at the epicenter of this. But we can't expect parents to be able to bankroll $3,000 for people to play sport. That's just not feasible. So there needs to be a connection here and a collaboration between the government to fund the infrastructure and for businesses to invest in their local community. But as a club and as an industry, we actually need sporting clubs to provide that return on investment, because it's not sustainable for businesses to partner if it's a donation.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. So let's play a little bit of a game here. Let's say I have an online direct-to-consumer brand. I'm selling female products. My demographics, 18 to 35, into health, wellness, beauty, fashion. Are you able to then pinpoint certain opportunities for brands? And for example, can you give us like some sports or some opportunities that you think would fit that brand?
Yeah, definitely. So 18 to 35's quite a broad range, but it's also a really good demographic, because you can look at the participants in that age group, who would be one cohort of people you may choose to target, or you could even look at the parents of the juniors. So you're anything up to probably about under 10s, you could sponsor on the base that the mums especially are going to fit into that audience. So it really just comes down to, are you looking for the participant, or are you looking for the mum who is connected to the club through their children? In both circumstances, the person's going to be the consumer decision maker, and they have authority to spend their own money. Then it comes down to, well, what's your product or service, and how do we want to get them in front of your business? It could be the 30-day challenge, which we roll out across multiple sports. It could be just for one sport. We have a variety of sports. We are looking after everything from cricket and AFL through to ice hockey, table tennis. There's big organisations up to 6,500 people within one club, through to some really small ones around 50 or 60. So the spectrum here is quite varied, also from a metropolitan area to more regional. The base is all about just understanding who your audience is and what the best way to engage. Now, that 30-day challenge is one example as to how we love to stimulate that sales component. If you might even want to consider like a online in-store night, a VIP night, where we can get everyone to log online, give them that experience of either a discount, a bonus, or something during that session. Why? because we know when they're there with their teammates, they're more inclined to spend money. All we need is the first person to make a purchase, that first person to understand what your business is, and it will flow through the rest of the club.
Yeah. So we've heard some of the highlights. What are some of the challenging parts, Robert, of growing and starting TCACC?
So, mate, I just dropped out.
Oh, that's all right. So we've heard some of the highlights. What are some of the challenging parts, mate? Some of the difficult things that you're experiencing at the moment or in the past with growing the business?
Yeah, the challenges are always, at my end, there's probably three clearly identifiable challenges. One being leveraging and utilising university interns has a seasonal aspect to that, and the continuity can be a little bit challenging. The second one being working at Grassroots Sport. It is volunteers. So from that perspective, there's a huge upside and there's a huge opportunity, but it's very easy to understand why businesses don't directly engage because the volunteers are so busy. They have their own work commitments, they've got family commitments, social commitments. So being able to get their time and focus is always a challenge. And then I think the third one is actually being really clear about what you're trying to achieve. It's very easy to come in and go, we would love to have our logo somewhere, but okay, that could be a really good outcome for you. But the question then goes, well, would you rather have your logo play somewhere or would you rather make money? We are doing a lot of education for businesses around how to make money because we perceive that to be the more sustainable strategy. And the analogy I use all the time is, Jamie, when was the last time you walked up to a logo, pulled out your wallet, and gave your credit card to the logo on the wall and walked
I'm
away?
a bad case study, mate, because I don't buy stuff really.
But that's
But
good.
I get what you're saying.
Because no one actually goes to the logo, do they? We always go to a human. And that's the pace that community sport has. We have thousands of humans who are ready and able to make a consumer buying decision. But if we only put a logo in front of them, the business isn't ready or able to take that money. So that's the education phase for businesses we spend a lot of time on to make sure that we can build the brand awareness, but when customers are wanting to spend money, businesses are ready to accept their money.
Yeah, nice. Prior to Partner, have you tried partnerships?
So we are working directly with businesses as well around partnerships. It's always a challenge around identifying good businesses, getting people's time, commitment, etc. So for me, Partner is about seeing a active group of people who have a mutually beneficial goal, and then to be able to make sure that we can just refine the edges and go, well, you do have a legitimate opportunity and capacity to make money. If that's what you're trying to do, we're happy to have the conversation. So I think it's a really great platform, and I think it's a really great initiative because we see it all the time. Partnerships work in business and partnerships work within sport. So the concept makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, awesome. I guess it's quite similar to what you just explained with people buying, because the other people are around them and they're getting, encouraged to. That's why we see partnerships being so effective because it's someone from authority already with a relationship, kind of recommending something, and we know it's all you always kind of buy off recommendations. If you recommend something to me, I'm probably going to go try it. I'm not going to go on Google because I trust you.
And the great thing about the businesses and the industries you have on board is they're complementary to each other. Right? You can look at almost every business and go, we could take out a whole segment here, but you could also go really niche and go, let's partner on this one base. Let's build a relationship over time. There isn't a need to come in and make a 3-4 year commitment. It's about going, well, let's get the benefits for both parties. Let's make sure everyone's on board, everyone's happy, and we can then expand from there, which can be quite challenging when it's not within this environment, because everyone's looking after own self-interest, aren't they?
Very good point. We try, and obviously, like you do with your clubs, educate our brands that come into the platform to really make sure when you're talking to one another that it works for both brands and, of course, the audiences. We see it like a triangle, the perfect partnership. At the top of that is the audience. So they're the heroes. It needs to make sense, and they need to benefit from it. But then both brands need to be equal as well. So even in your first week of being in Partner, shameless plug, but you've already, by the sounds of it, you've got some partnerships going. What's that mean in terms of saving time? Like, what would the outreach and process have looked? What would that have looked like previously?
So when we do it directly, we will approach a business and follow up until we get a no. And in some cases, personally, I think the longest one I've had has been 48 attempts.
Oh, wow.
Even at 5 minutes each, that's the better part of 240 minutes, 4 hours worth of work to get the no. So the time saved would be astronomical. And I think it's even more than just the time saved. I think it's around the quality of conversation, is that we all appreciate there has to be a commercial value to this. Everyone's in business to make money. Like, let's not get caught up in
that's
having.
Why we started.
It's. Let's be really honest that if there's money to be made from that audience, let's make money. So for me, that was a really key piece. In terms as to a saving, I'd be saying comfortably 10 to 12 hours. At a starting point, and I think over a couple of weeks we'll find it potentially even significantly higher than that. Having the decision maker at the first meeting is incredibly hard to get.
It's quite helpful, isn't
it? We'll spend literally weeks calling up businesses, speaking with businesses, and on the sole purpose of speaking with the decision maker. So for Partner to be able to bring those decision makers to the table in that first meeting is definitely a game changer in terms as to how quickly you can move forward. And I think even at least in the discussions I've had with businesses, their willingness to progress quickly. It wasn't as if we came to that initial meeting and it was like, who are you? Who are we? Let's try and build a relationship. It was going back to your previous point that the purpose of a partnership is a referral. There's trust. There's respect. Let's understand who the audience is, and provided we can get that connection with the audience, it makes a lot of sense for both parties to proceed sooner rather than later, but without being in a rushed fashion.
I don't want to paint the picture as if the opportunity with TCACC is only for smaller businesses, because I know you can roll all the opportunities in together for, say, bigger brands, and we are doing that. Can you give a little bit of insight as those kind of opportunities for brands and what would that mean for them? And then perhaps even some of those insights on the, I believe it was the ice hockey and the return. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So from our perspective, we can split our audience to fit your audience. The last thing we want to do is for you to be spending money on an audience that is not your consumer. What that means is if you have that 18 to 35 age group, it could be very much we have the capacity to go to all of our clubs on a national basis. It could be one that we want to look at just a particular state. If you just want to be in Victoria, that's completely fine. We can look at that. If you want to be with a particular sport, just basketball, great. We can look at that. So we can split, dissect, change up our the mix of clubs that we bring to a table to suit your audience. An example could be if you just want to target those who are 50 plus, purely because they are more mature, they've got the financial viability, they're financially sustainable as individuals, they're probably getting a bit more long service leave, they're moving into that next phase of their life. Like, there's a lot of sporting clubs we have who have life members who are very, very loyal people, and they're loyal to the club. We did a survey with each of our clubs, and I think off the top of my head, it's 93% of club members will proactively choose a sponsor over a competitor. So sporting clubs as a whole, they love to support people who support them because they ultimately know it's saving them some money. So from that perspective, the community's really active. Do we have to target everyone? Absolutely not. We can go as far as to say, well, which clubs within our network have young mums? If we are looking at something to do with babies under the age of 18 months, there's all of this information we can actually dive right into and go, okay, we don't need to have big numbers if we've got the right audience.
Mm.
And if we've got the right audience, we're going to be making more money. That's the end game to this. So yeah, our ability to segment and slice is really flexible. And it really just comes down to who's your primary customer and how can we give them a great, memorable experience.
Yeah, I think that's really an exciting channel. I guess you're trying to make, the sponsorships an actual attainable, I guess, marketing channel for businesses, and especially when iOS updates and the cost per acquisition is going so high, brands need to look outside the box a little bit. I think this is a wonderful solution for them.
That ability for $500 for 12 months, you can't beat that in terms as to continuity on your brand awareness. You go up to, let's say, $2,500. $2,500, you'll be in the probably top 10% of sponsors at 95% of clubs. In most grassroots sporting clubs, 5K would be the top sponsorship value. At your bigger ones, you do push up to the 10K mark. And when you start getting into that community sport, pushing into semi-professional, they want to go a little bit higher. But there's thousands upon thousands of potential customers that you could reach at that 2.5K mark very, very comfortably across a 12-month period through sponsorship.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's great, mate. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities, new opportunities that people wouldn't have been aware of. And yeah, thanks for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
Thanks, mate.